This happened a few winters ago, when I was living alone just outside a small northern Canadian town. It was the kind of place where your closest neighbor might be a 5-minute walk away if you cut through the woods, and where the night sky is so black, you can sometimes see the Milky Way with the naked eye. Some people find that kind of isolation unsettling. I didn't. Not at first. I'd bought the place after my divorce. A little acreage with a single-story house, a detached garage, a long gravel driveway that wound in from the road like a frozen river in winter. The backyard opened onto a thick stretch of forest that seemed to go on forever. Dark pines and skeletal aspens forming a wall at the edge of the property. I liked the quiet. I liked waking up to snow so deep it muffled the world. I liked sitting at the kitchen table with a coffee, watching the sun rise over a blanket of untouched white. That was the life I thought I was settling into, before everything changed. The first sign of trouble came in early December, the kind of winter morning you almost want to photograph. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, soft and powdery, covering everything in a pristine layer. No wind, no drifting, just perfect, unmarred white. I woke up, put on a hoodie, padded into the kitchen, and opened the blinds. The whole yard looked like a clean sheet of paper, except for one thing: footprints. A single line of boot tracks came from the tree line at the back of the yard. They weren't rushed or uneven. Whoever made them walked slowly, deliberately. The tracks didn't come toward the house. They circled it, wide loop, measured steps, all the way around the property. Then they cut back across the yard and disappeared into the woods again. I remember standing there in the kitchen, coffee mug halfway to my mouth, just staring. At first, I didn't feel scared, just confused. It was a weekday. Nobody was supposed to be out here. No hunters, no surveyors, no random hikers breaking a path through knee-deep snow before sunrise. But that was my brain rationalizing. My body reacted differently. Stomach tightening, pulse quickening. That subtle tingling at the back of the neck that usually means pay attention. Still, I put on my coat, grabbed my boots, and headed outside. The cold bit into my face the second I opened the door. The snow squeaked under my feet, that dry squealing sound you only get in freezing temperatures. Up close, the tracks were huge, bigger than mine, and I wear a size 11. Whoever it was had some weight to them too. Each print was deep, compressed all the way through the fresh snow to the old crust underneath. The tread was sharp, clean, not melting at the edges, meaning the tracks were recent, made maybe an hour or two before I woke up. They circled the house at a consistent distance, never coming closer than 10 feet to the walls. It felt methodical, like someone wanted a full perimeter view, but didn't want to press too close. Was it a trespasser? A lost hunter? Someone casing the place? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. Whoever it was didn't knock, didn't approach the front door, didn't come for help. They just circled and left. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe someone from the power company checking lines. Maybe the owner of the next property south of mine, out walking early. Maybe even some drifter cutting through the woods. The explanation didn't matter. Any explanation was better than letting my mind go to the darker possibilities. I went to work, shoveled the driveway, tried to forget about it. By evening, the snow had smoothed over most of the prints. I kept telling myself, if someone was actually trying to break in or do something dangerous, They wouldn't wander around the house and leave. They wouldn't make it obvious. It worked. For a while. 3 days later, another storm. Heavier this time. Thick flakes drifting down all night, piling onto the frozen ground in a way that erased everything beneath it. I woke up early, made coffee, and went straight to the window without even thinking. There were tracks again. Same entry point, straight from the tree line. But these weren't like the first set. This time, the tracks didn't circle once. They circled twice. The first loop was wide, similar to before. But the second loop was tighter, much tighter, bringing the prints within 5 feet of the siding in some places. And on the north side of the house, near my bedroom window, the prints weren't just steps. They were pauses. The snow was deeply compressed in single heavy spots where the intruder had stopped long enough for body heat or shifting weight to sink the boots deeper. I stepped out into the cold again, crunching through the new snow. Up close, the pauses were unmistakable. 3 of them, each one positioned directly below a window, my bedroom window, the kitchen window, and the small window above the sink. The prints faced the house, not angled, not drifting, deliberately facing inward, like someone had stood in each spot and watched. The air suddenly felt too thin to breathe. There is a difference between a trespasser and a watcher, between someone who stumbles through your property and someone who returns with a purpose. I felt it in my chest then, that creeping dread you don't want to name, the sense that someone had been out here while I slept, close enough to look directly into the windows if the curtains had been open, close enough to hear me moving inside, close enough to know I lived alone. I installed motion lights that same afternoon, cheap ones from Canadian Tire, the kind that run off AA batteries and clip onto the siding. Then I ordered a basic outdoor camera. Nothing fancy, just something to make me feel like I wasn't blind to the backyard anymore. That night, I sat in the living room with the TV on low, listening to the house creak as the temperature dropped. Every little pop of the wooden frame made me stiffen. Every settling sound felt like footsteps in the snow. I didn't sleep well. By the next evening, the camera arrived. I mounted it outside facing the yard and connected it to my phone. It wasn't a professional setup, but it was something. The app showed the yard in grainy infrared, white snow glowing faintly, the tree line a black mass, my deck a pale slab. I checked it a dozen times before going to bed that night. Nothing. Just static and darkness. I finally fell asleep around midnight. A few days passed. No new tracks, no strange noises at night. Nothing triggering the camera except the occasional snowflake blowing too close to the lens. I let myself relax again. Work got busy. I shoveled the driveway. I refilled the bird feeder. I planned to have my son over for the upcoming weekend. For a moment, I almost convinced myself the prints had been from some harmless wanderer. A one-time thing. Twice in a row, sure. But maybe they were passing through. Maybe they'd moved on. People come and go in rural areas all the time. A drifter, a hunter, someone exploring the woods. Any explanation was more comforting than thinking a stranger was watching me at night. By Friday, the whole thing felt distant enough that I almost forgot about it. Almost. The weather forecast for the weekend said light flurries. Nothing serious. My son loves snow. I didn't want him to miss his weekend with me over something I couldn't even explain. So I picked him up, drove him home, made hot chocolate, and tried to ignore the slight, persistent feeling that something or someone out there had been waiting. My son was 8 that winter, old enough to stay up late watching movies and make sarcastic little comments like a teenager, but still young enough to get excited about hot chocolate and building snow forts. He lived in town with his mum, and every second weekend he came out to my place. He loved it there, the space, the quiet, the trees. He said it felt like a secret base. I didn't tell him about the footprints. That Friday afternoon, I picked him up just as the sky was starting to dim, the way it does way too early in winter up north. Snowflakes drifted down lazily, nothing like the real storms we'd had, just a light dusting over the already packed snowbanks along the road. He hopped into the truck with his backpack, cheeks pink from the cold. "Do you have marshmallows?" he asked, before his seatbelt was even on. "Nice to see you too, buddy," I laughed. "Yeah, I've got marshmallows." We drove the 20 minutes out to my place. As we turned onto the long gravel driveway, the truck's headlights washed over the yard. I found myself glancing automatically at the tree line. Nothing, just dark trees and blowing powder. Inside, the house warmed up quickly as we got the fireplace going. He dumped his backpack in his room and came back out with his favorite blanket, this ridiculous faded thing with dinosaurs on it. And we spent the evening watching a movie while he worked through half a bag of popcorn. For a few hours it felt normal, comfortable, like the house was what it was supposed to be, a home, not a place, with someone lurking at the edges. I put him to bed around 10:30. His room was at the back of the house, looking out over the yard. When I tucked him in, his little nose peeked out from under the blankets, red from the dry air. "Can we build a fort tomorrow?" he asked sleepily. "Yeah," I said. "We'll make a big one. Maybe out by the trees if it's not too cold." He liked that idea. He closed his eyes with a tiny smile, and within minutes his breathing slowed into that steady, soft rhythm kids have. I turned off his light, leaving just the nightlight glowing in the corner, then pulled his curtains all the way shut. I double-checked the window latch without even thinking about it. I didn't sleep right away. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. Every now and then, I opened the camera app. The yard looked empty in the washed-out grayscale, just static, snow, and shadow. I kept the volume on my phone low, but the little click of the camera reconnecting each time I opened the feed felt loud in that quiet house. Midnight came and went. I finally told myself I was being paranoid and went to bed. I don't know what time I woke up exactly, but I know why. I woke up because the house felt wrong. It's hard to explain unless you've experienced that specific kind of stillness, where you go from sleeping to wide awake without a sound, without a nightmare, just this awareness that something is off, like the air pressure changed. I rolled over and squinted at the alarm clock, 2:43 a.m. For a few seconds, I lay there listening. The baseboards were quiet, no wind whistling, no branch scratching against the siding, just silence. Then I heard it, a very faint, slow crunch, not like the light patter of falling snow or the pop of ice shifting on the roof. It was heavier, rhythmic, the sound of boots compressing snow. Someone was walking in my backyard. My mouth went dry. I slid out of bed carefully, bare feet hitting the cold floor. I stayed low, instinctively avoiding the window, and reached for my phone on the nightstand. My fingers felt clumsy as I unlocked it and tapped on the camera app. The feed took a second to load, long enough for my heart rate to spike in that awful anticipation. Then the image appeared. At first, I thought the camera had glitched. The screen was filled with brightness. My motion light had kicked on, throwing pale light over the yard, and there at the edge of the deck was a figure. They stood facing the house, not moving, just standing. I could see the bulk of a heavy coat, the hood pulled up, arms hanging at their sides. Their boots were planted firmly, slightly apart, like they'd settled into that position and stayed there. They weren't blurred by motion. They weren't mid-step. They were perfectly still. My thumb shook as I instinctively hit the screenshot button. The person shifted slightly, just a small tilt of the head. The grainy night vision made it hard to see details, but I could tell one thing. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking toward the windows, toward my bedroom, toward my son's room. I slowly backed away from the window, careful not to bump anything, and whispered, "No, no, no." I don't remember tapping the 911 button. I just remember the ringing and the faint feeling that my own blood was buzzing in my ears. 911, what's your emergency? My voice came out as a whisper at first. There's someone in my backyard. Okay, the operator said, calm and professional. I need you to stay as quiet as you can and tell me your address. I gave it to her. She repeated it back. All right, she said. We're dispatching officers to you now. Are your doors locked? Yes, I said. I checked them 3 times before bed. I check them every night now. Is this person trying to get into your home? She asked. I looked at the feed again. The figure hadn't moved. Or if they had, it was so slight the camera didn't catch it. They're just standing there, I said. On my deck. Just staring at the house. Okay. Are you able to move to a room where you can lock the door? Preferably without windows. My eyes flicked down the hall toward my son's room. My kid is here, I whispered. He's sleeping. I don't want to. If I move around, they might hear me. That's okay, she said. Stay where you feel safest. The officers are on their way. I need you to keep me updated on what the person is doing. As she talked, the figure shifted again. They took 1 step closer to the deck railing. The motion light caught the outline of their shoulders and hood more clearly. The way they carried themselves was wrong. Not like someone lost and searching for help. More like someone studying the house. They tilted their head up slightly, like they were listening for something inside. Did they move? The operator asked, hearing my sudden intake of breath. Yes, I whispered. They're still out there. They're closer. Okay, you're doing great. The officers are en route. If at any point they attempt to enter your home, tell me immediately. I pressed the phone harder to my ear, as if that would somehow make the connection stronger. Minutes passed like that. Me crouched below the line of the window, the operator speaking softly in my ear, the person in the yard standing in that same awful, patient pose. At one point, the figure turned its head slightly toward the camera. Not enough to see a face, just a vague suggestion of where the face would be. It was like they were testing something, checking angles, learning. The operator asked me to describe what I was seeing. Height, build, clothing. Big, I said. Tall, heavy winter coat, hood up. I can't see their face. Any idea if it's male or female? She asked. I hesitated, watching the way the figure shifted its weight, the breadth of the shoulders. Feels like a guy, I said. I don't know. Bigger. The way they're standing. Each word made the situation feel more real. At some point, the operator said, the officers are about 5 minutes away. Almost like they'd heard her. The figure on the deck moved. They didn't run. They didn't jerk suddenly. They simply turned slightly and stepped backward off the deck, out of the light. For a second, I thought the motion sensor had turned off, but the deck was still glowing pale. The person had just stepped out of its range. All I could see now was a vague shadow at the edge of the yard. Then the camera feed caught them again, walking slowly toward the tree line, not hurrying, not stumbling, just that same steady, deliberate pace. They reached the trees and disappeared into the black. The motion light eventually clicked off, plunging the yard back into darkness. "They're gone," I whispered. "Okay," the operator said. "The officers will still check the property. Stay inside until they arrive. Keep your doors locked." The minutes between the figure vanishing and the arrival of the police were some of the longest of my life. Every sound in the house, every tick, every pop, every faint groan of the structure contracting in the cold felt like it might be something else. I kept expecting to hear the doorknob creak, or a knock at the glass, or worse, nothing at all, and then footsteps in the hallway. When the red and blue flashes finally painted the snow outside my living room window, I almost sagged with relief. Once the officers left, the house felt strange, too quiet, too bright in some places, too shadowy in others, like I was suddenly aware of every angle someone outside could see. I checked on my son. He'd slept through everything, face mashed into his pillow, hair sticking out at odd angles. I watched him breathe for a minute, the rise and fall of his chest. I didn't sleep again that night. When he woke up around 7, I put on my best casual dad voice, made pancakes, and tried to pretend I wasn't running on pure adrenaline and bad coffee. "Can we play outside?" he asked, looking longingly at the yard. "Yeah," I said after a second. "But we're staying close to the house, okay? No going near the trees." He shrugged. "Okay, we can build the fort on the deck." That worked for me. We went outside. The cold air slapped my face awake. His boots left small, neat prints in the shallow snow on the deck. From there, I could see the other tracks clearly. They started at the tree line, carved a straight path across the yard, and stomped heavily onto the deck. From the depth and distance between the prints, whoever it was had a long, heavy stride. The impressions near the edge of the deck, where the figure had stood, were deeper than the rest. The snow there was compacted so hard it looked almost dirty, like it had been pressed, melted slightly, then refrozen. My son was busy scooping snow into a plastic bin, chattering about making defensive walls. I walked to the far corner of the deck, following the tracks with my eyes, not my feet. From where the intruder had stood, they would have seen straight into my bedroom window and, at an angle, my son's. They would have been able to see the glow of his nightlight. They would have been able to hear us if we talked. I felt suddenly exposed in a way I hadn't before. Not just watched, but studied. That was the night things stopped feeling like a weird, creepy coincidence and started feeling like someone had chosen my house on purpose. For a while after that night, nothing happened. No new tracks, no movement on the cameras, no motion lights kicking on in the middle of the night. If this had been a movie, that would have been the moment where everything reset, where the danger passed and life went back to normal. Real life doesn't work like that. What actually happened was worse, because once the immediate fear faded, something else settled in. The feeling that whoever had been out there hadn't failed. They'd just learned enough. The next couple of weeks were some of the longest of my life. Every night, after I locked the doors and turned off the lights, I checked the camera feed. Not once, not twice. Over and over, like if I stopped looking, that would be the moment something happened. I slept lightly. I woke up at every noise. A branch snapping in the wind sounded like a footstep. The furnace kicking on made my heart jump. Even my own breathing sometimes felt too loud. I stopped opening the blinds first thing in the morning. Instead, I'd crack the door and step outside, scanning the yard before I even looked down at the snow. Most mornings, there was nothing. And that almost made it worse. Because when there were tracks, at least I knew, it was late March when the final storm hit. One of those heavy, wet snowfalls that dumps everything at once. The kind that knocks branches down and coats everything in thick, clinging white. I remember going to bed that night listening to the snow hit the roof in soft, steady thumps. It was loud enough that I figured it would cover any sound from outside. That should have made me feel safer. It didn't. I woke up early, before dawn, the house dim and quiet. The storm had stopped sometime in the night. Everything felt pressed down, like the world was holding its breath. I made coffee and stood in the kitchen, staring at the steam rising from the mug, working up the nerve to look outside. When I finally pulled the blind up, my stomach dropped so fast it made me dizzy. There were footprints again, but this time there wasn't just one set. Two distinct trails came from the tree line. One was familiar, the same heavy boot prints I'd seen all winter. Deep, wide, confident. The other was smaller, shorter stride, lighter weight, different tread. They walked side by side across the yard, close enough that their prints occasionally overlapped, together. Halfway across the yard, the smaller set of tracks veered left, angling toward the living room window. The larger set continued straight. My hands were shaking as I pulled on my boots and jacket and went outside. The smaller print stopped directly beneath the living room window, right where my son and I had built a blanket fort a few weekends earlier. The snow there was packed down, disturbed by shifting feet. Someone had stood there and looked in. The larger prints went farther, toward the pile of outdoor toys near the back corner of the house. My son's sled was gone. I followed the tracks slowly, my breath loud inside my hood. From the toy pile, the larger footprints headed back toward the tree line. But now there was something else between them. A long, shallow groove in the snow. A drag mark. Not wide enough for a person. Not chaotic. Smooth. I already knew what it was before I reached the trees. The sled. I found it just inside the forest, propped upright against a trunk like someone had leaned it there on purpose. Not discarded, not hidden, just placed. But that wasn't the part that made my chest tighten. Next to the sled, the snow was disturbed in a way I hadn't seen before. There was a clear impression of a knee pressed into the snow, and beside it, the imprint of a gloved hand. Someone had knelt there. Someone had stopped, lowered themselves, and watched my house from the cover of the trees. I stood there for a long time, staring at that spot, my mind filling in images I didn't want. How long had they been there? What were they saying to each other? Were they watching the windows or listening? I picked up the sled and carried it back to the house. my arms shaking with something that felt like rage mixed with fear. I checked the footage as soon as I got inside. There was almost nothing. The heavy snowfall had triggered the camera repeatedly, but the image was mostly white noise. Streaks of snowflakes blowing past the lens, shadows shifting, nothing clear enough to identify. But there was one clip that made my stomach turn. Around 1:40 a.m., the feed briefly cleared. 2 dark shapes crossed the yard, not running, not sneaking, walking. The clip lasted less than 5 seconds before snow swallowed the image again. That was it. No faces, no details, just enough to prove what the tracks already had. I called the RCMP again. A few days later, an officer came by during daylight to walk the property with me. He followed the track's path into the woods, moving slower than I had, scanning the ground carefully. About 200 meters in, he stopped. "You see this?" he asked. I didn't at first. Then I noticed the subtle signs: broken branches, packed snow, disturbed ground that didn't match animal movement. A little farther in, we found it. A makeshift camp, a tarp stretched between 2 trees, a small fire pit filled with ash, empty food cans, discarded gloves, and a plastic storage bin. Inside were random items, tools, flashlights, a thermos, and children's things: a small plastic shovel, a toy car, a bright blue winter hat, my son's hat. I felt sick. The officer closed the lid quietly. "We've had reports of someone living rough back here," he said. "Possibly more than one person. Looks like they've been moving camp to camp." "Why my house?" I asked. He looked toward the tree line, then back at me. "Secluded. No close neighbors. Easy access to the woods," he said. "And once someone realizes there's a kid involved, sometimes that changes things." I didn't ask him to explain. They cleared the camp, increased patrols, told me they believed the people responsible had moved on. Spring came, the snow melted, the tracks disappeared, but something never left. Even now, years later, I still live in a rural place. I still like the quiet. I still like winter. But every first snowfall, I do the same thing. I wake up early. I walk to the back window, and I look at the yard before the world wakes up. Most of the time, the snow is untouched. But every now and then, when the light is just right and the trees are still dark, I swear I see something at the edge of the forest. Not a person, just a place where someone could stand. And I'm reminded of something I learned that winter. Snow doesn't create danger, it just reveals it. I booked the cabin 3 days before Christmas. It wasn't part of some big plan. I'd just come out of a breakup that felt heavier than I wanted to admit. And the idea of sitting alone in my apartment while everyone else posted pictures of family dinners and matching pajamas made my chest feel tight. So I searched for something quiet, somewhere cold, somewhere far enough away that no one expected anything from me. That's how I ended up renting a cabin in the mountains. The place was part of a small winter cabin resort. About 15 units spread along a winding road through thick forest. Most of them were booked solid for the holidays, but one listing kept popping up as available immediately. When I called to confirm, the woman on the phone paused after I gave her the cabin number. "You said cabin 12, she asked. "Yes," I said. "That's what the listing says." Another pause. "Cabin 12 isn't usually rented in winter," she said carefully. That should have been my sign to hang up. Why not? I asked, half joking. It's older, she said. Plumbing issues. Heating can be unreliable. We usually keep it closed until spring. But it's available now, I asked. Yes, she said. Technically. The way she said technically stuck with me, but I was already committed. She emailed me a door code, directions, and a note reminding me to bring groceries because the nearest town was nearly an hour away. Before we hung up, she added one last thing. If you have any issues, she said, call the office. Don't try to fix anything yourself. I arrived just before sunset. The road up was icy and narrow, snow piled high on either side. The cabins appeared one by one through the trees, each with a small porch light glowing warmly. Cabin 12 was at the very end. It looked fine. Older than the others, sure, but solid. Snow drifted halfway up the porch steps, like it hadn't been used in a while. Except when I punched in the door code, the lock opened immediately. Inside the cabin was warm. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing was the smell. Not stale or moldy, but faintly metallic, like wet wool and old heat. The lights worked. The fireplace was clean. The furniture was dated but tidy. Someone had been here recently. I told myself it was probably maintenance, or a cleaner, or someone checking the pipes. Still, I noticed details I couldn't explain. A pair of boots by the door, not mine. A mug in the sink, still damp. A faint indentation on the couch cushion, like someone had just stood up. I stood there for a long moment, key still in my hand, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just the soft hum of the heater. I moved the boots into the corner, unpacked my bag, and told myself I was being dramatic. That night, snow started falling hard. Big flakes. Thick silence. I made dinner, watched a movie, and fell asleep on the couch with a blanket pulled up to my chin. The cabin creaked occasionally, the way old buildings do in cold weather. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. I didn't know why at first. Then I heard it. A sound at the door. Not a knock. More like the faint click of someone testing the handle. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, staring toward the dark entryway. Nothing happened. After a minute, I told myself it was probably the wood contracting or ice shifting. I went back to sleep, but I didn't sleep well. The same woman answered. I told her about the boots, the warmth, the journal. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I told you cabin 12 isn't usually rented, she said. That's not an answer, I said. Someone has been in this cabin. Yes, she said quietly. We're aware. She explained that someone, no one knew exactly who, had been using cabin 12 during the off-season, breaking in occasionally, sleeping there, leaving before staff arrived. They changed the locks multiple times. It never seemed to matter. Why would you rent it to me? I asked. Another pause. All the other cabins were full, she said, and we haven't had any incidents in months. Incidents? I repeated. You should leave, she said. Today. I packed my bag, but the snow had other plans. The road out was closed due to whiteout conditions. The plows wouldn't reach the resort until morning. The office told me to lock the door, keep the lights on, and call 911 if anything happened. That night, I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps above me. Not on the porch, on the roof. Slow, deliberate. Then came the sound that made my blood run cold. The soft thump of something dropping inside the walls. Then movement under the floor. I stood frozen in the middle of the cabin. Phone clutched in my hand, listening as someone crawled beneath me, close enough that I could feel the vibration through the boards. They stopped directly under the bedroom and stayed there, waiting. I don't remember much after that, except sitting on the couch with every light on until dawn, whispering to a dispatcher while snow piled higher outside. By morning, the plows had cleared the road. I left without looking back. Later, the office refunded my stay and apologized. Cabin 12 was permanently closed shortly after. They never found the person. Sometimes, in winter, I still think about that cabin, about how warm it was when I arrived, and how someone else clearly thought it was theirs. I still don't drive that stretch of highway in winter if I can avoid it, not because it's especially dangerous on paper. No sharp mountain drop-offs, no tight hairpin turns, just long, empty, and unforgiving. The kind of road where help can be an hour away, even on a good day. And that night was not a good day. It was 2 days after Christmas. 4 of us packed into my friend Eric's SUV, heading back toward the city after a holiday visit with his family. Spirits were high, leftovers in the cooler, coffee in the cup holders, music low enough to talk over. It was late afternoon when we left, but winter does that thing where late afternoon might as well be night. The temperature dropped fast as we climbed. Snow started falling lightly, then heavier. Nothing dramatic, just steady. Eric slowed down. We all stopped talking as much. The road narrowed, trees crowding in closer on both sides. The last town we passed was small. 1 gas station, 1 diner, everything else dark. Should we stop? I asked. We'll be fine, Eric said. Just black ice conditions. I've driven this 100 times. That was the exact moment the back end slid. No warning, no gradual loss of traction. Just a sudden, sickening sideways lurch. Eric corrected instinctively, and that's what sealed it. The SUV spun, slow at first, then faster. Someone yelled. I remember the sound of tires screaming on ice, then silence as we left the road. We hit the snowbank hard enough to knock the wind out of me. Then everything stopped. For a few seconds, none of us moved. Snow dust drifted through the headlights like fog. Everyone okay? Eric finally said. We checked ourselves, bruised, shaken. No blood, no broken bones. The SUV was nose down in a ditch, half buried. The engine was still running, but the wheels spun uselessly when Eric tried to back out. No cell service. Of course. We got out to assess. The cold hit instantly. The kind that cuts through your jacket and bites exposed skin. The road was empty in both directions. Snow fell steadily, filling in our tire marks almost as soon as we made them. We passed a rest stop back there, someone said. Like 5, maybe 6 kilometers. Closed for winter, Eric said. But it might still have power, or at least shelter. Standing there in the snow, with daylight fading and no signal, the decision felt obvious. Lock the car, grab what we could, walk. We'd been walking maybe 15 minutes when one of us noticed them. Footprints, not ours. A single set, heading the same direction. They were fresh, crisp edges, no snow settled inside them yet. Whoever made them was walking steadily, not rushing. At first, it was almost comforting. Okay, someone said. At least we're not alone out here. But the longer we walked, the quieter we got, because there was only one set of footprints, not a group. Not multiple people, just one. And they weren't coming from the direction of the rest stop. They were already on the road when we joined them, meaning whoever it was had passed our crash site without stopping. without checking, without calling for help. That didn't sit right. When we finally saw it, the building looked abandoned. Lights off, snow piled against the doors, sign half buried. But when Eric tried the door, it opened, unlocked. Inside, the air was warmer than outside. Not heated exactly, but not freezing either. Insulated warmth, like the building still held some of the day's heat. We stepped in and shut the door quickly, stamping snow off our boots. The place was dark, but not dead. A vending machine hummed quietly. The bathrooms were unlit, but clean. No broken glass, no graffiti. And in the far corner of the main room, something else. A backpack, dark, heavy looking, not ours, sitting upright against the wall. The room went very quiet. Maybe someone else crashed, someone said quietly. Then where are they? I asked. We waited, listened. The building made small noises, settling, wind brushing the walls, but nothing else. Eric checked the doors, both exits still unlocked. That's when we noticed something else. The footprints outside didn't stop at the door. They circled the building first, a slow loop in the snow. Then they came inside and didn't leave. We spread out carefully, staying together. The bathrooms were empty. The office door was locked, but there was a faint sound, not loud enough to be obvious, just wrong enough to notice. Breathing, not labored, controlled, coming from somewhere deeper inside the building. "Hey," Eric called out, trying to sound calm. "We're stuck out here. Car accident. Just looking to warm up." No response. The breathing stopped. That was worse. He stepped out from behind the vending machines. Tall, thin, layered clothing that looked like it had been worn for weeks. His face was pale, eyes sunken, beard uneven and frost-stiffened. He raised his hand slowly. "I thought you were following me," he said. His voice cracked from cold and exhaustion. We didn't respond right away. "Following you?" I asked. He nodded. "From the road, the car. I thought you were them." "Them who?" Eric asked. The man laughed softly, not amused, relieved maybe, or unhinged. "They're out there," he said. "They stop cars when it's bad, pretend they need help." The room felt suddenly smaller. "What do you mean?" someone asked. "Black ice," he said. "People slide off. Someone always does. Then they wait." We exchanged looks. "You didn't stop for us," I said. He shook his head. "No, I can't. If you stop, they know you're vulnerable." "Who is they?" Eric pressed. The man rubbed his face with shaking hands. "Two guys," he said. "Truck, no plates. They took my friend last winter." That's when we noticed his boots. One sole was missing. He'd been walking on raw rubber and fabric for kilometers. We stayed together after that. No one suggested leaving. The man, his name was Mark, told us he'd been hiding at the rest stop for 2 days. Snowstorms kept him pinned. He'd seen headlights slow near the crash site earlier, then keep going. "Not plows," he said. "Different pattern." We didn't ask how he knew. The sound came a few minutes later. An engine, slow, deliberate, passing the rest stop, then stopping. Headlights washed through the frosted windows, then shut off. Silence. We didn't move. Mark whispered. They found another one. Someone tried their phone again. No signal. Then the door handle moved, just slightly, tested. Then a knock, not loud, casual. "Hey," a voice called from outside. "You folks okay in there?" We didn't answer. The knock came again, harder. The handle rattled. Mark shook his head slowly, eyes wide. "They won't break in," he whispered. "They wait." We stood there in the dark, listening to someone breathe on the other side of the door, boots shifting on concrete. Minutes passed, then footsteps. The engine started again, drove away. None of us spoke until the sound faded completely. We stayed there all night. No one slept. Every sound made us flinch. When daylight finally came, the road was clear. A plough arrived around mid-morning. The driver stared at us like we were ghosts. There was a report of a crash, he said. You're lucky. We didn't tell him everything, just enough. Later, the police found our SUV and signs that someone had been near it after we left. Footprints, cigarette butts, truck tracks. They never found the men Mark described, but they did find another abandoned vehicle farther up the highway. Still warm, door open. I don't know what happened to Mark after that. He refused a ride into town, disappeared down the road before we left. Maybe he didn't trust anyone anymore. I get that, because now, whenever I see headlights slow down on an icy road, I don't feel relief. I feel dread. And every time someone says, it was just black ice, I think about how the ice wasn't the most dangerous thing on that highway. It was the people who knew exactly when it would happen.
Madness.